so that it is, I want to say easy, but at least comfortable to follow the information that we want to convey to you. If you attend the full session today, I think you will walk away with a good understanding of the UN Pension Fund, of what your participation entails, what you should be aware of if ever you have a break in service or special leave without pay, for example. And it will also give you a good idea of what you're actually contributing towards for what kind of benefit in the future. So that is the focus of today's session. This is not a pre-retirement seminar, so we are not going into the details of separation today. This is also not a session to discuss the funding status of the UN Pension Fund. And I'm saying that here because I know, working in the fund, we of course see that we are getting more questions in this current time around the solvency of the fund, the long-term stability, financial stability of the fund, questions around will my benefits still be available when I retire, maybe in 10 years from now, questions, what is the situation if I'm a retiree, is my benefit safe? All of those questions, of course, we understand why you're raising them. I think we are all aware of the very delicate times that we are functioning in right now. But this is not the session to address those big questions. Today, we will give you an overview of the fund and very large terms of how the fund functions. That includes some information about funding. And I can say that the fund is in a very healthy and stable situation, and that it is solid, and that we totally expect to pay benefits into the long-term future. But this is not a session dedicated to that. If you're here for that kind of item or that interest, if your concern is very much around will the fund still be here when I retire in the future and so on, that hopefully is not something that you need to worry about ever, but these kind of questions will be addressed in a global town hall that the pension fund's chief executive and the pension fund's representative of the Secretary General for Investments of the pension fund are organizing on the 9th of April in the morning EST New York time. So if you're interested in those questions, and I think it will be a very interesting session that I would say, even if you're here today for more practical and participation related items, if you're interested in those, in this general global town hall about the status of the fund, I would very much encourage you all to please attend that global pension town hall organized on 9 April by the fund's chief executive and the representative of the Secretary General for Investments. So I hope this is helpful information. I will also say that we, the fund, we are organizing regularly pension town halls, including with information for separation and pre-retirement. So if that is your main concern, today we'll give you some useful information, but it will not go into the same depth as we go into when we hold our pre-separation and retirement town halls. So if this is something that you're interested in, we will organize a session on that topic in the near future, probably in April. We will, or I would also refer you to the extensive information available on our website, where we actually have the recordings of all our pension town halls that we have held last year and this year, which include pre-separation and retirement town halls, which are very much the same as what we're doing here today, a pension town hall, where you can follow all the relevant information about that topic, pre-retirement and separation. So if that is something that is your main concern today, I would say it might still be very useful to attend today, but you may want to go and listen to the recording of the most recent pre-separation and retirement pension town hall that is available on our website, and I will show you in a moment where you can find that. I will also show you, actually right now, let me share my screen, where you can find information about the fund's actuarial situation and about its funding status. So that if you are here for that topic today, and this is not what we're going to cover, you could at least get some information on our website. So here you should see, hopefully, our pension fund website. And on the website, there are, of course, many resources, and one of them is about more in detail about the fund, the plan design, etc. So if you are interested in knowing exactly what the financial situation of the fund is today, you can go to this tab here, Investments. And here, of course, you have general information about how we invest, responsible investment, risk management, but also under historical fund performance, you'll have the current asset value of the fund. So if I go there, sorry, let me do that. Takes a moment. So here we are on the page under investment for historical fund performance. And here you see this is very small, of course, so you can make that bigger, and I'm doing that right now. Here you have the status, the funding status of the UN Pension Fund at the most recent date, which is the value at 7 March 2025, so a few days ago, at which time the status was around 96.7 billion US dollar, which is very solid and very healthy. So you can go here, I mean, maybe not every day, but from time to time, and you will get a sense of the movements of the pension fund's assets. The general trend over time has always been upward, but there have been times, of course, with major dips, which then were recovered within maybe a few months or sometimes a couple of years and exceeded at a later stage. But of course, given the level of our assets invested in the markets and so on, it is expected that there are fluctuations and sometimes even of several hundreds of millions or possibly billions. So seeing up and down movements is not unusual at all. Anyone who has had a look at this in the past would have seen these movements quite frequently. But the general trend of the fund truly has been, since its existence, a steadily upward trend, and that is expected to continue, even if there's turmoil in the markets and there are moments when we may have losses. That is about investments, and now actuarial matters. If you go to About Us, and underneath About Us, if you go down the menu, there are various items, but also actuarial matters. And of course, the language here is a little bit technical, but it does give you an idea of how the fund functions, that there are regularly evaluations done of the financial stability and health and long-term needs of the UN Pension Fund. And you will see that there are open group valuations, which assume that the fund continues in the way it currently does, with participants actively contributing and retirees and beneficiaries receiving payouts from us. There is also a so-called closed group valuation, where the actuaries assess what would happen if the fund closed immediately, meaning we no longer have any new participants or anyone paying contributions into the fund. Then what? And if you read through this, you will see that overall, again, the fund is stable and is funded to an extent where we expect that in the next, we call it long-term stability of the fund, 30, 40 years, the fund has the assets to pay benefits, current benefits, but also future benefits in the long term. This is how much I will say about this today. I am not an expert on investments. We here today are from the operational team. We are experts on the regulations and rules of the fund and the application to our individual members. And we are here to help you understand, of course, overall how the fund functions. But I hope that these tools on the website will give you already access to useful information. And again, please join us on 9 April for the pension town hall that will be given by the fund's chief executive and the Secretary General's representative for the fund's investments, Pedro Guazo and Rosemary McLean, when they will go into questions around funding status, solvency, and so on, as well as in general, the fund's situation. So again, 9 April, 9 a.m. New York time. For anyone who wants to join, please join us then so that you get information on the pension fund's status at this time where many people are worried. With this, I will now start the actual presentation. Before I go into the document itself, I just wanted to let you know that we're here with a team of pension experts, and I'm co-presenting with my colleague, Dilba Muradova, who is a colleague in client services. Both of us work in client services in the fund and have for quite some time, and we will be presenting. And our colleagues from our client services team will be moderating questions a bit later when we open the chat. So the Q&A chat is not yet open. We will open it later once we have gone through some essential information so that then you can ask your questions, and your questions should please be not about your personal case. Why? Because you don't want to share your personal details like your name plus your pension fund unique ID number publicly, of course. So personal questions for your specific case, if you have questions that are not being answered here today, or that cannot be answered from the resources we will show you that you have at your hand on the website or in member self-service, then of course we will also talk about how you can best contact the pension fund so that you can get information for your personal case. Otherwise, for questions in the Q&A today, please keep them to topic questions, meaning if something isn't clear or we didn't cover a topic that you are particularly interested in and that should be part of participation essentials, then please put that in the chat here and my colleagues will do their very best to address your questions. We will publish the recording of today's session as well as the presentation, and we'll also try and publish the Q&A that we handle today here during the session on our website, and I will show you the page in a moment so that if you are interested or you cannot stay for the full session today, you can access this information at your own time when you need it. Finally, also, just so you know, at the end of the session, we will share a survey link just so that if we can get your feedback on things that we did well or that we didn't do well, it would help us to know this so that we can improve our future sessions accordingly and make them as useful as possible for our participants and members worldwide. Okay, so with that, the first thing we do is actually an icebreaker, just a general question. And Mirko, if you want to share the question in the chat, that would be great. The question is, when you hear the term UN pension fund, what comes to your mind? Just if you're willing to share your thoughts, whether they're positive or worried or whatever it might be. I'm sure you have done this before. It's a thought cloud. If you would be willing to share here, what comes to your mind when you hear the word UN pension fund? That would be great. So I don't know, Mirko, if you have probably shared already. Check the chat, the Q&A. In it, you would see the link to a Slido poll. And if you're willing to take that poll, it's just to get a sense of what comes to your mind. All right, thank you so much. So I think we can all see complicated, disturbed, complicated distribution of rules trustworthy but complex. A long time to go. So I guess some of us are relatively new to the UN and the pension fund. Pension after retirement, income after retirement, coverage for my dependents, good life after stopping work. That is very nice, and I really hope everyone will benefit from their retirement benefit in the future, and it will help them have a comfortable life after work indeed. Savings, money to enjoy, too many rules, I know. I'm a lawyer and I can tell you that we interpret those rules on a daily basis and it is not always easy, but compared to national rules, they're actually relatively limited, but yes, complex. Financial security, worry, there's some worry, absolutely. I understand that. We all do. I think that currently with how the markets are behaving and generally the situation the UN is facing right now, that there's uncertainty and worry. I hope that today's session helps a little bit ease your worries, but also the session on the 9th of April. Sustainable retirement, yes. Thank you so much. I think this is very interesting to see, at least for me, the range of thoughts that come to mind when we think of pension and pension fund. I would say we are lucky. We are part of what is called a defined benefit pension fund, which means that our future entitlements are not based on the actual how the fund does financially in the markets and the assets, but they are based on a formula that is set in our regulations and rules and determines our future income based on how long we contribute to the fund and based on our age at the time of separation. There's a formula that is relatively simply, it's the length of our contributory service translated in a percentage rate multiplied by our final average income level. We will talk about that later, but it's our income is defined in our regulations and rules in the sense that all the conditions of our future entitlements are set, and those entitled to a form of retirement benefit in the future will get a benefit for life. It doesn't stop at some point. It's not that it's based on your own contributions or even your own plus the organizational contributions, and once we have paid that out, there's nothing left. That's not how our fund works. A defined benefit plan provides lifelong retirement payments. For as long as you are alive, you are entitled to a benefit at a certain level, and we adjust benefits for cost of living over time. So normally we see steadily increases in retirement entitlements. And also very importantly, of course, our fund provides coverage for death and disability, and we will talk about that. So with this, I will start. Let me share the screen and thank you again so much for having participated in this thought cloud. So we can close the chat now and we will go into the presentation. Okay, let me reshare, sorry. All right, I hope you can see. If not, I would ask my colleagues to let me know, but I hope, of course, that it's visible to you. All right, so the UN Pension Fund, UNJSPF, that is the United Nations Joint Staff Pension Fund. And joint stands for the fact that we are servicing organizations UN system-wide. It's not just the UN offices in New York, Geneva, Nairobi, Bangkok, Chile, etc., but it is the UN system. And most of the UN system organizations are actually part of the pension fund. So I would imagine we have here nearly 1,200 attendees. I would think that maybe we have attendees from most, if not all, our pension fund member organizations. I don't know, I can't see right now, but I would think we have participants from the UN, from different locations of the UN, maybe from peacekeeping, from UNICEF, UNDP, WHO, maybe from ICAO, from OPCW, a new member organization that joined us this year in January, etc. UN Women, UNFPA. I mean, there are so many entities and member organizations where if a staff member qualifies for fund participations, then we are all part of the same pension scheme and pension fund. So this is why it's called the United Nations Joint Staff, for us, the staff members, pension fund. Not to be confused with UNFCU. We are again focusing today on essentials for participants, for those of us who are currently members of the fund and paying contributions to the fund. Okay, trying to get to the next slide. We already did that. Thank you for your thoughts and for your input on what comes to your mind. So what are we covering today? We'll have an overview of the fund and the UN pension scheme. So what is the pension fund plan design, basically? And also who or what is this pension fund that you're part of? What is that structure? For many, it's just this abstract entity sitting somewhere, maybe in New York or Geneva, and we're there doing our business, bureaucrats. We want to bring it a bit closer to you and let you know what is the essence of what we do. And then Dilba will take over and present to you some key pension definitions and factors. That is to help you speak pension. To speak the language of pension will help you navigate information about your pension a bit better. We are not going to go through all the aspects and all the terms in the regulations and rules, not to scare you, but there are some key terms that I think if you understand them and some key concepts, it will really help you make the participation in the pension fund more concrete. And if and when the time comes that you need some information from your member self-service or from our website, or you need to contact us, you'll have kind of a better or feel more comfortable navigating our vocabulary and our lingo on the website and so on. Then we'll look at something or some essentials of what you need to know while a participant in the fund. There are some time-sensitive items that may apply to some, not to all of you, but where if you are newly joined and you are a recent participant in the fund, you may have some options available to you that you should avail of. And we'll also go over some essentials that apply, of course, to everyone, so that you know if in the future you were to have a break in service or special leave without pay, you know what you should think of in terms of pension, so that you at least reach out and ask questions or let us know that there's a situation where you will be on a break, and if you have a question, we can help clarify. But we see that sometimes because colleagues don't really know anything about pension or their participation, they don't, of course, know that during certain periods like leave without pay, there might be an impact on their pension participation and they might have options. So we want you to know so that you can empower yourself to come to us if you need more advice. And then we'll go into the overview of the main pension benefits. And again, this is only an overview where we go fairly quickly over the different kinds of benefits the fund provides and under what circumstances what kind of benefit would be available to someone who separates. And then we will look at the other kinds of benefits, which are disability and benefits for survivors. And that goes into the topic of what we are covered for as members and participants in the UN Pension Fund, meaning that from the day that we join the fund, we have this coverage for disability and survivors for death. So if I were to pass away while in service, my spouse would be covered for a surviving spouse's benefit. So while I can no longer earn an income, the fund will provide an income replacement in the form of a survivor's benefit. So we will go over the essential information about that coverage so that you know not only what you're covered for, but also what kinds of benefits would the fund pay to survivors and what are the conditions. And then finally, some pension tools where we will just together go through key pages on the UN Pension Fund website, but also, and I think maybe most importantly, on the Pension Fund's member self-service, where I will take you on a tour in my member self-service to share with you why it is a really useful tool for you as a member in the fund. So this is what we are covering today. It's dense, but hopefully useful. So first, I will go for a few minutes through an overview of the UN Pension Fund and UN Pension Scheme. I already mentioned there are some key takeaways that you should know as a participant. Just very essential information. Number one, I mentioned it, you're part of a defined benefits pension scheme. And as part of that, you're covered for the risk of death and disability. We will talk about what that means in more detail, but that really is key information. And being part of a defined benefits pension scheme, as I mentioned, it implies that if you are entitled at some point to a form of retirement benefit from the UN Pension Fund, that benefit will be payable to you for life. And possibly following your death, it could be that if there are entitled survivors, it's followed by payments to your entitled survivors, to a spouse for life, to children for a certain duration. Another key takeaway is, as part of this pension scheme and a member in it, once you become a participant in the fund and you have qualified for pension fund participation, you will have to pay pension contributions. And that is not optional, but mandatory. Once you separate, you are entitled to a benefit. So your contributions feed into a future payout. And finally, very important, the UN Pension Fund is solid. It is strongly funded. We are currently funded at 111%. I will talk about that a bit more in just a moment. So who we are and what we do. There are videos on our website. Oop. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop this for a moment. I think I didn't switch on the share sound item when I shared, so let me reshare and make sure I include sound. So we're going to watch one video about how the fund works so that you get a sense of how the fund works. And these videos that you see here and throughout the presentation are all available on our website. There are about 20 videos that are a few minutes long explaining key pension information. I'll start the video. Again, this one is 1 minute and 56 seconds.
When you have a staff contract with a UN Pension Fund member organization for 6 months or more, you become a participant in the fund, unless your contract excludes participation in the fund. As a participant, a percentage of your salary, based on your pensionable remuneration, is paid into the fund each month. The member organization that employs you pays twice the amount that you pay. Today, more than 140,000 individuals and 25 member organizations make monthly payments into the fund. Fund capital is invested, and the income from these investments ensures that the fund is able to meet its obligation to pay benefits into the future. The UN Pension Fund is known as a defined benefit plan. It pools all of the contributions received. Your benefit at retirement is based on how long you contributed to the fund and the level, grade, and step at which you contributed, and it's guaranteed for life. It is not a defined contribution plan, which is another category of pension plan, where there is a separate account for each individual, and benefits are based on the market value of the invested contributions. The fund pays out monthly benefits to more than 80,000 retirees and other beneficiaries in more than 190 countries and territories. The regulations and rules of the fund are strictly implemented to safeguard the fund's financial security and pensions. For more information, visit UNJSPF.org.
All right, so that was a very brief overview. It also gives you an idea of how these videos that we spent quite a lot of time creating work, and truly they are short, but I think they provide useful information and helpful information. So moving on, there are more videos also about this topic, but before we go, I'm so sorry. Not sure, I hope you can hear me well. I have some static noise in my headphones, but hopefully you don't hear that. So it was mentioned, but I will go there again. Scope and purpose of the fund. So the fund's purpose is to provide income replacement to those who are entitled to a retirement benefit, and income replacement to possibly staff who can no longer work for reasons of health and who will be awarded a so-called disability benefit. So then the income replacement would take the form of a disability benefit, and income replacement in the case of a staff member passing away and us paying survivors benefits to entitled survivors for a duration in time, possibly for life. Now, the difference between providing retirement benefits and the coverage for disability and death is, for retirement benefit entitlement, you have to have so-called vested pension rights. It means you have to contribute to the fund for a minimum duration of 5 years. So anyone who has paid contributions to the fund for at least 5 years is entitled to elect a form of retirement benefit upon separation. If they are younger than normal retirement age, they don't have to select a retirement benefit, but the option is there. And in most cases, I would say members of the fund who separate will elect, if they can, a form of retirement benefit because it's a lifelong entitlement. And in most cases, the fund pays twice, if not 3 times, the amount in the form of benefit payments that were ever paid to the fund for this person from them, the staff member and the organization. So it's financially usually very interesting. For disability and death coverage, however, you don't need to be vested. That coverage starts on the first day of you being a pension fund participant, provided you were medically cleared when you joined your organization. So the difference between coverage for retirement benefits and coverage for disability and death is that one requires vesting, the retirement benefits, by contributing at least 5 years, and the others don't, the disability and death coverage, where you are covered from the first day of joining the fund. Now, who do we serve? It was mentioned in the video. The fund has currently actually 25 member organizations. The number you see here was at the end of 2023. So that is based on our official data, let's say, that was published. But we actually, since the 1st of January 2025, have a new member organization, OPCW. So we are now 25 member organizations in the fund, with a combined number of staff that are participants in the fund that exceed 149,000 participants. So in the video, they mentioned over 140,000. That is correct. We are nearly at 150,000 participants paying contributions to the fund every month. And that contribution income helps us fund part of our payouts. So in 2023, at the end of 2023, the participant income amounted to just over $3.4 billion US. And that is the income from the actual participants themselves and their employing organizations who fund the UN pension fund system by paying for each participant in the fund twice the amount that the participant themselves pays. So that funding was $3.4 billion US in 2023. At the same time, during the same year, by year end 2023, the fund had over 86,000 beneficiaries, meaning people receiving a form of monthly payment from the fund, whether those payments are retirement benefits or disability benefits, or possibly survivors' benefits. In total, we had 86,000 or a bit more than 86,000 of these kinds of benefits and beneficiaries at the end of 2023. So at end of 2023, or in the year 23, the fund had to pay out just over 3.52 billion US dollar. So a bit more than what was received through contribution income from participants. We will talk about that a little more in just a moment. And to also give you an idea, in 2023, the fund handled over 122,000 queries from the combined population of retirees, beneficiaries, and participants. That is just to give you an idea of how much questions and hopefully answers the participation and membership in the fund yields throughout a year for the fund. All right, so now in terms of serving still and also funding. In terms of what the fund does and how do we serve, so those participants that reach separation status and are then entitled to a benefit, in 2023, the fund processed new benefits within 15 business days from the date of receipt of the required separation documents by the fund, within 15 business days for more than 92.7% of cases. So not 100%, but close to. The cases that yielded or that needed more time than 15 business days usually are cases where there are discrepancies that first need to be clarified with the employing organization and or the former participant before we can proceed with implementing a new benefit. But I will say the vast majority of cases are handled within 15 business days from receipt of the required and duly completed separation documentation that is fund relevant by the fund. So that is just to give you an idea of the efficiency of the fund. And fortunately, most people receive their payments within that time frame. Just a heads up, that is not 15 business days from the date of your separation. That is from the date of receiving in the fund the required documents from you, the former participant, and from your former employing organization's payroll and HR. So today is a participation essential session, not a separation session. I won't go more into detail on this, but just to give you a sense that the fund is working very hard to ensure that we are constantly increasing our efficiencies across the board. And 100% of payments were made on time. We pay benefits at the end of every month, and the payroll was issued normally and on it, but and timely every month. And finally, market value of asset. End of July 2024, we had a number of 93.9 billion US dollar. Why this number? At that time, we published an official document that included that number. It gives you a comparison because this is mid-2024. We were at 93.9 billion US dollar. Today, we are at over 96 billion US dollar. So there is and has been a further increase in the last a bit more than 6 months. Funded ratio, we'll talk about that a bit more. Here, if you go to the bottom of the page, funded ratio 111%. What does this mean? This means the ratio is exceeding 100%, which means we have more than we need in terms of assets and income to pay benefits in the long term. And long term means 40 years into the future. So based on what I showed you a bit earlier about the closed and open group actuarial valuations, we are solid. We are fully funded. We are actually funded above 100%. That is very reassuring. Otherwise, what you see here is information I already mentioned. Maybe just, again, the comparison. The income received was a little less than the payouts we had to make. So if you look at the 3.4 billion compared to the 3.52 billion, then how do we cover the gap? We cover the gap by taking a little bit of the money from the assets of the fund, so currently over $96 billion to fill the gap to pay benefits as needed. And this, by the way, was and is expected for a maturing pension fund like ours. We are over 75 years old. It's completely normal that at this age, a pension fund of our scale has a higher payout rate than income through contributions. So that's why we need to build the assets constantly and solidly. Finally, where does a fund sit? Well, we have our headquarters in New York, and we have a very big processing office, and big is relative, but another big for pension fund purposes, office in Geneva. In both offices, we handle processing of benefits and client service queries. We also have two small, very small, two-people offices in Nairobi and Bangkok for a local presence. The Nairobi and Bangkok office have literally one liaison officer and one support staff in each office. They are handling a lot of outreach in the region and also provide services locally to those in those duty stations, Bangkok and Nairobi, or those who come through those duty stations if they need a consultation or advice. But the biggest offices are New York and Geneva. And in total, we have around 400 staff working in pension administration. That's where I belong, which is basically the handling of the individual case files of all of our members, from the moment that someone becomes a member until the time we close a file following death and payment of the last survivor's benefit. And then it also includes, the number includes those colleagues who work in the Office of Investment Management, OIM, I don't know the exact number, but well over 150 people, I think. And they are in charge of ensuring that our investments work and we continue to grow them. So we already covered that the pension fund is a defined benefit pension plan. I will not go into too much detail. Again, takeaway is if one day you become entitled to a retirement benefit from the UN pension fund, will get a benefit for life. And also the fact that our future entitlements are calculated based on a formula that takes into account how many years and months we contributed to the fund and translates that duration into a percentage rate called a rate of accumulation, which we then multiply by our final average income level, which is called our final average remuneration, and Dilba will talk about that. Another relevant point, the UN pension fund is a scheme that is US dollar based, meaning contributions are reported to the fund in their US dollar value, and all benefits that we calculate and implement are initially calculated in their US dollar value. Then we pay them in the currency that you wish. So maybe my benefit, or for sure, my benefit will be calculated in its dollar value before it's put into payment. But then if I request to be paid, for example, in euro, that value is then converted into its euro value and paid to me in the currency that I request. Euro or any of 70 main payroll currency that the fund pays in. So that's just some high level, overview of our pension scheme. How does it work? Well, it works that our contributions flow into a general pool of income, into which also our investment income flows and sits, from which we then draw the benefit expenditure that we need to pay, and also a very small extent administrative costs for the fund. And all of that is, of course, under very strict oversight from our governing bodies, as it should be. Here on the right-hand side, just a graph to show you the general trend of our assets. So you see that at the end of 2023, on the right-hand side, the graph, we had $88.2 billion in our assets at that time. So you saw a bit earlier that in July 24, we had, I can't remember exactly right now, but I think it was $94 billion assets. And today we have 96. That's a very steady upward trend. But here you can see in this graph that since 1990, and this is just because more didn't fit here, since 1990, the trend is steadily upward, but with the fluctuations I mentioned at the beginning. So ups and downs are expected and normal and not truly worrisome because they are part of any large invested fund. For details, again, I showed this at the very beginning, but I know some of you joined a bit later. So for details about the fund's investments and the actuarial situation of the fund, again, you can find that information on our website under the Investments tab or under the About Us tab, where under Actuarial Matters, you would find information about the current and in general the system of funding of the UN Pension Fund. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Dilbar, who will take over to talk about key pension definitions and factors. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine, and welcome everyone again. My name is Dilbar Muradova, and I work together with Christine in the fund's New York office. Let me share my screen. I hope you can see it. If not, please let me know. All right. So now we will look at the definitions of key terms that we use in the pension fund. And as Christine mentioned, knowing them will help you understand your pension matters better. So the main key takeaways from what I'm about to discuss is that as a participant in the fund, you are building what we call your contributory service. And the longer your contributory service is, the higher your future payments will be. And your date of entry is the point at which you become eligible to join the fund's participation. This date, as you will see shortly, plays a crucial role in determining your early and normal retirement ages. And final takeaway is that in order to qualify for a lifelong retirement benefit, you need to have at least 5 years of contributory service. Once you reach that milestone, you are considered vested in the pension fund. All right, so first term is date of entry. It's one of the key factors in determining your normal and early retirement ages. This is the date when you become entitled to participate in the pension fund. To become a member, you need to meet the requirements of being a staff member on a contract of 6 months or longer, or if you initially had a shorter term contract, it must be extended to reach 6 months at some point. And the breaks between contracts cannot exceed 30 days. However, once you reach the 6 months mark and your contract is extended, you become eligible to join the pension fund. It's important to know that your date of entry into the pension fund may not be the same as your actual start date with the organization. In some cases, you might begin working before you qualify for participation in the fund. And this is not something unusual, and there is no need to be concerned about it. The reason for this could be that your initial contract was not long enough to qualify for the immediate participation in the fund, or perhaps you were initially hired under a contract type like consultancy that did not qualify you for pension fund participation. The next term is contributory service. It's a key factor in calculating your future retirement benefits. The longer your contributory service, the higher your rate of accumulation for future entitlements will be. And contributory service refers to the time when you were an active staff member, meaning you were paying contribution to the pension fund. If you took a special leave without pay or had short breaks in service, this will be considered non-contributory periods. And finally, when calculating your rate of accumulation, that is the rate at which you acquire your retirement benefit, we only consider the periods during which you were actively contributing to the fund. So the longer your contributory service, the higher your rate of accumulation will be, which in turn translates into a higher pension benefits. So the rate of accumulation, it's used in calculating the retirement benefits, and there is a maximum rate of accumulation, which is capped at 70% of your final average income level. And to reach this maximum rate, you need to contribute for over 38 years. If you work beyond this 38.75 years, you will remain an active participant and continue making contributions and earn interest, and by doing so, possibly increase your final income level or even the lump sum you will be eligible to receive, but your rate of accumulation will remain the same, which is 70%. The next important term to be familiar with is pensionable remuneration, and it is a salary scale that is used to calculate your monthly contribution to the pension fund. For professional staff, this scale applies uniformly across all duty stations. This means that whether you're P3 in New York, Geneva, or Vienna, and you're step 6, the pensionable remuneration scale for your grade and step is the same. And it doesn't matter if you are in a hardship duty station or not, the scale remains the same for the same grade and step. And for local and general service staff, the scale corresponds to your gross pensionable salary, which includes your salary and any pensionable allowance, like language allowance. So again, pensionable remuneration is the scale that your organization uses to determine how much you and your organization contribute to the pension fund each month. And these scales are set by the International Civil Service Commission, not the pension fund. And one last point here to remember is that your pensionable remuneration is not what your future retirement benefit will be. It's just a scale that we use to calculate your pension contribution and what we call your final average remuneration, or FAR, which I will discuss next. So FAR plays a critical role in determining your retirement benefit. The final average remuneration is based on the highest 36 months of your pensionable remuneration over the last 60 months or 5 years of your contributory service right before you separate from your organization. And for most participants, these highest 36 months typically come from the last 36 months of their career, but this isn't always the case. Something like currency exchange fluctuation can sometimes mean that your highest 36 months might not fall within your last 36 months of service. And this is applicable to mostly to the general service staff. In such cases, the highest 36 months will come from another period within the last 5 years of your service. And to calculate your retirement benefit, the fund takes your rate of accumulation, which is based on the length of your contributory service, and multiplies it by your final average remuneration. And this determines your retirement benefit. And finally, the concept of vesting. Vested pension rights means that you have earned the right to receive a lifelong retirement benefit by contributing to the pension fund for at least 5 years. To be entitled to these lifelong benefits, you must have vested pension rights. However, as was mentioned at the beginning of the session, you don't need to be vested to be covered for the risk of disability or death. This coverage starts from your first day of joining the pension fund, as long as you were medically cleared when you joined your organization. Now, the normal retirement age. It's the term that is used for pension purposes, and it's different from your mandatory age of separation, which is based on your organization's staff regulations and not by the pension fund. So now let's first focus on the normal retirement age. This is the age at which, if you were to separate with vested pension rights, so meaning you've contributed to the fund for at least 5 years, you would be eligible to receive your full retirement benefit, to which no reduction factor is applied, meaning you will be entitled to a so-called normal retirement benefit. And Christine will discuss this retirement benefit in the second half of this presentation. Your normal retirement age is set by the regulations and rules of the pension fund. These rules have evolved over time, and different normal and early retirement ages have applied depending on when you joined the pension fund. So if you joined the fund before 1 January 1990, then your normal retirement age is 60 and your early retirement age is 55. And if you joined between 1 January 1990 and 31 December 2013, then your normal retirement age is 62 and early retirement age remains at 55. However, if you joined on or after January 1st, 2014, then your normal retirement age is 65 and your early retirement age is 58. So it means that your retirement age could be different from that of a colleague, and your normal retirement age could also be different from your mandatory age of separation. Now, mandatory age of separation is the age at which your organization requires you to separate. It's essentially the maximum age you can work until, according to the staff regulations of your organization. For most of us, the current mandatory age of separation is 65, which changed from 62 to 65 in 2018. This means that, generally speaking, you can work until the age of 65 if your contract or your organization allows it. However, it's important to know that this change in mandatory age of separation does not affect your normal retirement age for pension purposes. Your normal retirement age is determined by when you became a member of the pension fund. And your normal retirement age is if your normal retirement age is 62, it remains 62 for pension purposes. So even if your mandatory age of separation is now 65, you can still choose to retire at 62 without any early retirement penalty, because you have reached your normal retirement age for pension purposes. So again, just to clarify, you don't have to separate from service at your normal retirement age. The fund has no say over when you choose to retire. If you decide to continue working beyond your normal retirement age, you can do so, and your contributions to the pension fund will continue to increase. And this will in turn increase your pension benefit based on the longer service. All right, now let's talk about your participation in the fund. And the main key takeaway from what I'm about to discuss is that as a participant, you must pay pension contribution to the fund. You pay 1/3, and your organization covers the remaining 2/3. Your pension contributions are proportionate to your income level based on your grade and step for a given month. So as your income level changes, your contributions will adjust accordingly. And finally, if you're a new participant in the pension fund, it's important that you submit the A2 form to the fund as soon as possible. And the purpose of this form will be discussed by Christine shortly. And as you know by now, the length of your contributory service is a big factor in your future benefits. So it's important that you are aware of the time-sensitive options available for purchasing contributory service, such as validation, restoration, and transfer in of pension rights. I will discuss these options in more details. So, who is eligible to participate in the pension fund? To become a participant in the pension fund, you must meet two key requirements. First, you must be a staff member. Unfortunately, if you are a consultant or you are a volunteer, you are not eligible to join the fund. And second, you must have a contract with a minimum duration of 6 months. If you meet both of these criteria, you become a member of the fund from the very first day of your 6 months contract. However, many of us begin our career with contracts that are shorter than 6 months. In such cases, we wouldn't be eligible for the fund's participation immediately, but would have joined once we've accumulated 6 months of service through a series of staff contracts. These contracts must be consecutive with no breaks of more than 30 days between them. Once you reach 6 months of service and further extended on a staff contract, you will then join the pension fund. So if your date of entry into the fund is later than your start date as a staff member, this is likely due to the type of contract that you had initially. And again, don't be alarmed if this happens. This is very common. Now, once you are eligible to be a participant in the pension fund, you will be required to make contributions. And here how it works. The total contribution to the fund is 23.7% of your pensionable remuneration each month. As a participant, you contribute 7.9% of that total, and your organization contributes the remaining 15.8%. And this contribution rate has remained unchanged since 1990, showing the stability of the fund. So in order to understand how your contributions are calculated, take a look at your salary slip. There on the top left, you'll see an amount labeled pensionable remuneration. And this is an annual scale based on your grade and step for that month. This PR rate, pensionable remuneration rate, is divided by 12 to give you the monthly amount, and you will pay 7.9% of that amount as your contribution, and your employer will then contribute twice of that amount. And here on the left, you see the pensionable remuneration table that was published by the International Civil Service Commission for professional categories. And the latest one is effective 1 February 2025. And again, it's very important to remember that pensionable remuneration is not the amount you'll receive as your retirement benefit or a lump sum payout when you leave the organization. Instead, it is used to calculate your monthly pension contribution and later to determine your final average remuneration when calculating your retirement benefit. You may wonder how to check your current status in the pension fund. The best way to do this is by reviewing your annual pension statement, which is available inside your member self-service portal. If you haven't registered for MSS yet, I strongly encourage you to do so as soon as possible. So to access the statement, simply log into your MSS and go to the Documents tab. And there you will find your annual pension statement, which generally becomes available around May each year. And this statement will show you the status with the pension fund from the first day you joined until the end of the most recent year. For example, your 2023 annual pension statement, which is the latest one available, will show you the status, your status from the beginning of your participation until 31 December 2023. So what can you see inside your pension statement? You can see your personal data. This section will list your name, date of birth, gender, marital status, and your category. It will also show you your normal retirement age for pension purposes. Under contributory service section, you will see the start date of your contributory service, meaning when you began contributing to the pension fund. If there is any difference between your date of entry into the fund, meaning when you first qualified, and your beginning date of contributory service, this may be due to the options like validation or restoration or transfer of pension rights. We'll discuss this further shortly. And then the total contributory service at the bottom, you'll see the total contributory service as of the end of the recent year. And this is the total number of years and months you've contributed to the fund by that date. And you'll also see any breaks in participation if you had any. In the contribution part, the statement will show you the total amount you've contributed up to the statement's end date and the interest you've earned on your contribution. Please remember that the statement will only show you your personal contribution, not the organizational share. And finally, your annual pensionable remuneration. This section will display the pensionable remuneration rates that have been used to calculate your contributions. This data is crucial because it will be used later, as I mentioned, to determine your final average remuneration when calculating your retirement benefit. Just something to note here is that this section here may not show all your pensionable remuneration history, but it will highlight the most recent entries. And if there are any changes in your pensionable remuneration, they will be reflected here. There was a question earlier in the Q&A about what can you do as a participant to ensure that the records that we have on file for you is correct. So we ask you that you you as a participant, please review your pension statement and ensure that your personal details, especially spelling of your name, your date of birth, your marital status are all correct, your contributory service, your contributions. If you see any discrepancy, contact your HR focal point to correct the records with the pension fund. or contact us directly. So we may look at your file and ensure that everything is correct. Now, some principles that you should be aware of while participating in the fund. So once you qualify, you are obliged to become a member in the fund. You cannot opt out, and your contributions will be automatically deducted from your salary every month. The fund cannot accept voluntary contributions, meaning you cannot make voluntary contributions for a period of break-in service, because the fund is allowed to receive contributions from the staff participants only for the period during which they were a staff member of one of our member organizations. During break-in service, this is not the case, and we're not allowed to receive contributions, and you cannot make voluntary contributions. And just a reminder of vesting aspect, that in order to be entitled for a lifelong retirement benefit from the fund, you have to first vest by paying at least 5 years of contributions to the fund. Number 5, you earn compound interest on your contributions year after year at the rate of 3.25% per year while you remain an active participant and until you separate from service. Your contributions do not earn interest after you separate from service. The fund cannot extend personal loans to participants. We are not a bank. We are only allowed to make payments once someone has separated and we received the required separation documents to correctly calculate entitlements and pay them. We cannot make payments to a third party, meaning we can only pay to you, to an account in your name. We would not be able to pay someone on your behalf, so account must include or be in your name. And finally, the fund is under very strict confidentiality rules. To be more precise, we are bound by the rules that we cannot release confidential information relating to our retirees or beneficiaries to a third party. So if you want us to share information about your pension file with a family member or a friend or colleague, you would have to inform us in writing to allow us to release this information. This is to protect you and your information. And of course, if you do give us such permission, we will then honor it. All right, so what are the benefits of being a participant in the pension fund? Once you become a participant in the pension fund, you are covered for the risk of disability and death. I won't go into much details because Christine will cover this topic during the second half of the session, but it's important to know that from the moment you join the fund, you are eligible for the coverage in the event of disability or death. And if you become disabled and are awarded a disability benefit, you will receive an income replacement in the form of this benefit. And similarly, if you pass away while in service and were married with children at the time, the fund will provide income replacement to your surviving spouse and children, provided that they meet the eligibility criteria. Now, final points on participation. So now, knowing that the length of your contributor service may impact your future entitlements, it's also important to know or to understand how you could potentially increase your contributor service. And there are several options. Let's start with the validation. So validation allows you to make a period of non-contributory service count as contributor service. For example, if you became a staff member, if you become a staff member before qualifying for the pension fund participation. You can apply to validate the time you spent as a staff member, but not yet in the pension fund. This option is available within 12 months of you becoming a participant in the fund, meaning that if this option is available to you, you have to express your interest in validating your prior non-contributory service within 12 months of entering the fund's participation. Then there is an option of restoration. Restoration is an option for those who left the fund after receiving a withdrawal settlement or elected a deferred retirement benefit. If you later return to the UN system and rejoin the fund, you can apply to restore your previous contributor service by reimbursing the withdrawal settlement that you received, plus compound interest, if any. And just like with validation, you must apply within 12 months of rejoining the fund. And if you elected a deferred retirement benefit after April 2007, you may also inquire about restoring your prior contributory service under Article 24 bis. However, please be aware that this option may not always be beneficial. And finally, transfer of pension rights. If you were previously a member of another international organization's pension scheme that isn't part of the UN pension fund, and you later joined the UN, you might be eligible to transfer your pension rights from that organization into the UN pension fund, provided that we have a transfer agreement with that organization. This transfer would add the pension rights from your previous organization to your current contributory service in the pension fund. You must apply for this transfer as soon as you join the fund, and strict conditions apply. Well, actually, all three options come with strict timeline and require that you contact the fund in writing. And by taking advantage of these options, you can increase your total contributory service, which will in turn increase your rate of accumulation and lead to a higher retirement benefit. Another way to increase your contributory service could be if you opted to pay contributions during a period of leave without pay. And just to highlight that it's an option, not an obligation. It's an option that is open to anyone who starts the leave without pay. You would have to make sure that you're clear on these options and whether or not you wish to move ahead and make contributions to the fund while on leave without pay. So you have to be informed in advance to make that decision, because if you wanted to make voluntary contributions to the fund while on leave without pay, you would have to make sure that you set that up before starting your leave without pay. And this is because the fund cannot accept retroactive contributions for a period of leave without pay. So we will not accept that you make payments after starting the leave without pay. If you opt to make contributions to the fund while on special leave without pay, you have to make arrangements with your employing organization and not with the pension fund. It will have to be your payroll office that you would agree with on how you would make these payments and how you would transmit the payments to them, because you will no longer be on their payroll. And then you also have to be clear on that you will be responsible for your own, not only your own share, but also the organizational share. So it's essentially it's a very expensive option, because you'll have to cover your own 7.9% and also the organizational share, which is twice of that. So essentially paying 23.7% of what your last pensionable remuneration would be for the month before you go on leave without pay. And if you decide to do that, the period of your leave without pay for which you paid would be considered a normal contributory service, and it would, of course, increase your rate of accumulation. And in the future, if you separate with the retirement entitlement, you would receive a higher entitlement from the fund. Something to keep in mind is that if you're sure that you will not be eligible or you would not opt for a retirement benefit in the future, I would discourage you to pay contributions for the leave without pay. And this is because if you're not getting a periodic benefit in the future, the organizational share that you would cover out of your pocket would not be paid back to you as part of your withdrawal settlement. Meaning, if you were to leave with a withdrawal settlement when you separate, you would not recover the amount that you paid out of your pocket for the organizational share. You would only recover the 1/3 that you paid on your own behalf, because the organizational share can never be paid as part of a withdrawal settlement. However, if you're sure that you're going to receive a form of a retirement benefit in the future, and potentially even know that there could be an impact on early retirement reduction factor, then maybe you want to consider making payments while on leave without pay. So yeah, just keep in mind that most people don't opt to pay contributions for the leave without pay because it's an expensive option. And finally, the part-time. If you have a period of a part-time work, if you work for at least 50%, you will remain a participant in the pension fund. What would happen is that depending on your part-time percentage, you would have your rate of accumulation adjusted proportionately to the rate of your part-time percentage. If you had less than, if you worked for less than 50% part-time, you would no longer be entitled to participate in the pension fund. And for vesting purposes, part-time service is counted as full-time. For example, if you have 3 years of full-time service and 3 years of part-time service, it will be counted as 6 years of contributor service, which means that you'll vest your pension rights after 5 years of contributory service, regardless of whether that was full-time or part-time. And then finally, break-in service. If you had break-in service, this means that you have a period of service that ends and another service period that will start. And in between, you have a period during which you were not a staff member of any UN pension fund member organization. So many participants in the fund have periods of break-in service, and it depends on the length of your break-in service period and on whether or not you received a payment from the fund, whether you will end your participation in the fund or not. So to put it differently, if you separate and at the time of separation request the payment of a benefit and we start paying you or implement that benefit, that means that you will end your participation in the fund. You are no longer a participant. You are now a beneficiary of the fund. Then if you rejoin the fund at the later stage, you will start a new participation, a new period of participation. You will have a new entry date that will determine your normal and early retirement ages. You could at that point see whether you can restore a withdrawal settlement, whether there is anything to validate, etc. Second option is you separate and you do not receive a payout from the fund, but your break-in service is longer than 36 months. In this case, because your break-in service exceeds 36 months, you would have to start a period of participation if and when you start again participating in the fund, because the length of your break-in service is more than 36 months. So even though you may not have received a payout for whatever reason, if your break-in service exceeds 36 months, you will start a new participation in the fund with the new date of entry. You would, of course, be entitled to something for the old participation, depending on the length of your contributor service. Then third scenario, if you separate and you do not receive a payment from the fund, however, you rejoin the fund within 36 months. So within 36 months again. In this case, you will continue your participation and add the new contributory service to the contributory service you had already acquired under the earlier part of that participation. So here, because you did not receive a payout, and because you rejoined within 36 months, basically in that case, your break-in service is like a bridge connecting contributory service periods within one period of participation separated by that break in service. So in that case, you would preserve your initial date of entry into the fund at the very beginning of your participation, with normal and early retirement ages remaining the same, and you would simply have inside one period of participation a first period of contributory service, then break-in service, and then the second period of contributor service. And when you separate in the future, you would add the total contributor service and determine your entitlements based on the total period of participation. And then finally, if you were to separate, you did not receive a payout from the pension fund, and you have a break-in service of more than 30 days, but less than 36 months. In that case, because your break-in service is more than 30 days, you have to again fulfill the contract requirements of being a staff and having contract of 6 months or longer before you continue your participation in the fund. And should that not be immediately, you may have a little period that you can validate to be part of your contributor service. And then once again, qualify, of course, when you rejoin the fund, you continue your participation. And the last scenario, you separate, you don't receive a payout, you rejoin within 30 days of having separated from service. Because your break-in service in the scenario is less than, or it does not exceed 30 days, you would not have to qualify for pension participation by meeting the 6 months requirements. Even if your staff contract was for only 3 months, for as long as you are again a staff member, if you rejoin within 30 days as a staff member, one of the member organizations of the pension fund, you would immediately be back in the fund from the first day of the contract. For detailed information about participation and everything that I've just discussed, you can find a link to our website here where you will find a lot more information about participating in the pension fund. Up next, we are going to discuss the benefits that the fund offers. But before we do that, we are going to take a small break for 10 minutes. The current time in New York is 10:32. So if you can please be back by 10:42 so we can resume our session. Enjoy your break.
All right. Thank you very much, Dilba. I hope everyone had time for a little break and to stretch and maybe stretch your brain also. I know it's a lot of information at once. Just a few points before I go back into the presentation. During Dilba's presentation, was actually reading through the Q&A, and thank you very much to all my colleagues who have typed away to answer your questions. So I'm aware of the questions that are coming in. I see that there are quite a few questions actually relating to separation, entitlement options, and so on. So again, I know today's session that is not the focus, but we are going to give you some overview right now in the next chapter on the different kinds of benefits the fund provides, but we're not going to go into the details of every benefit option and calculation and so on. So as mentioned before, if that is something that is of urgent importance to you, I would say the following, and I'm going to share our website for just a moment. There is a wealth of information in this regard on our website. So there are the recordings of past pension town halls, and I'm going to take you to the page where you can access these recordings. So you see here on top, I go to resources and then down pension town hall sessions. If you click there, it will take you to that page, which is this. And here you can see past events. There's a whole long list of pension town hall session events, the most recent at the bottom. And you can see that for each of these events, there is a recording posted and usually also the presentation itself. These are presentations either in English or in French for various topics, including, as you can see on the 15th of January this year, pension essentials for, oh, sorry, no, forget that one. On the 14th of November, sorry, 2024, so just a few months ago, separation and pre-retirement essentials. Okay, that's in French, so you might be more interested in the English version, which was just before. In English, it was on the 13th of November, separation and pre-retirement essentials, and then click here for the recording or here for the presentation. So if this is something that you're specifically interested in, that presentation includes detailed information about all benefit options, how they are calculated, the eligibility conditions, and also detailed information about the separation process, what is required, how to prepare, the timeline from separation to implementation, etc. So I would say, if you are interested in this and it is acutely important to you, visit this page. So again, under resources, pension town hall sessions, and go to this recording of 13 November 2024. In addition, we have on our website, also under resources, e-learning modules. So these e-learning modules were designed to help you have an interactive tool to learn about key pension information, especially also, again, benefit and separation essentials. So that is another way that you could learn about that information about separation and specific details about the different benefit options. So those are two tools you have that you can use in your own time, and you don't depend on anyone, your organization or us, launching and organizing a pension town hall. I will say that we are aware of the situation and we will organize a pre-separation / retirement town hall in April, so that if that is very important, you have access to that session. It will be posted here. The date will be announced here on this page, and I'm back on the page now of pension town hall sessions. Once we have determined a date, we will post the date and the link to that session on this page under future events, and we hope to post that within the next week, so that you can prepare for it and you know that it is coming. And we will hold one in English and then thereafter in French. So be on the lookout, because we will organize that session as soon as we can. And then finally also, and I will go there again later, but I just wanted to highlight it here, that if you have questions about your benefit options, about the separation process, there is so much information under this tab here for clients. So if I go back to the main page, you don't need to, but for clients, you see you have here all topics, which brings you to the general topic page where every single topic that we have a web page for is listed, and you just simply click on the page that you're interested in and it takes you to that page. So for example, overview of the separation process. If you click here, it takes you obviously to that page, which is hidden behind that stop sharing thing, but I'll go there like this. And there you have information about what do you need to do as a staff? What does your organization need to do in terms of separation? What is it that the fund will do? Then what are the documents that you need to prepare for fund purposes for separation? And then the same, what is it that your organization will have to submit to the fund? And what is the processing timeline? So take the time, if you are actually possibly separating in the future, and you know that it is possible, take the time to go to this page again, which is under for clients, either under the all topics or separating or retiring. You will find this page called overview of the separation process. So if I'm under this page here for clients, you scroll down and under overview of the separation process, you have all that information. And for the benefit options, here you have benefit options. So if you visit that page, it will give you an overview of the different kinds of benefits the fund provides. And then for each benefit, the key information, who is eligible, how is it calculated, and so on. So that is a useful tool to learn about your benefit options and, of course, how they are actually constituted and which ones might be available to you. There are also these charts, benefit eligibility chart, where you can check length of contributory service and age at the time of separation, check which is your case, and then you'll see what kind of benefits might be available to you. And another chart where each of the benefits that the fund provides is actually not only explained, but compared to the other kinds of benefits. So if you have different options at the time of separation, go to this chart, check the questions and the comparative answer for the options of benefits available to you. Now, the first step to do is, of course, to run an estimate. And we'll look at that a little bit later. But once you have run an estimate for a given separation date, you will know what your options are, what benefit options. You have an idea of estimated amounts, and then for more details, you could go to this page to get more information if you need it. So again, that is a page called Benefit Options with detailed information for each of the benefit options and a video that also explains all of these options in quite some details. Okay, so that's again, all of this is under for clients, and you can either visit the all topics page and you see all the possible pension topics for which we have detailed web pages, or you can say, well, I'm specifically interested in separating or retiring. And if you click there, it takes you to a selection of web pages that might be especially of interest in this context of separating or retiring. So I stop there for now. We'll have a look at a bit more tools later, but I'll go back to the part about the different main benefits provided by the fund. We have roughly an hour left. So with that, do we have actually an hour, half an hour? I'm just not certain, but we'll go through it. So overview of the main benefits. Again, high level overview where you will get a sense of what kinds of benefits does the fund provide and under what conditions. Now, what are the key takeaways here for this chapter? Number one, that there are two different kinds of benefits that the fund provides. They are on the one hand, the so-called settlement payments. Settlement payments are one-time final cash payouts. Once you have received a settlement payment, that could be a withdrawal settlement. That is the end between your and the fund's relationship. unless you return to the fund at a later stage. Maybe you rejoin another member organization of the fund later. And at that time, you have the option to reimburse to the fund a withdrawal settlement that you have received from the fund within a certain time frame from rejoining. But a settlement payment means a one-time payment and we are done. Versus so-called periodic benefits. And those are benefits payable on a monthly basis. So basically, retirement benefits are periodic payments. They are payable periodically, months after months. Settlement payments extinguish any future entitlement. There is no further payment and there are no survivor's benefits attached to settlement payments. Whereas periodic payments are payable monthly and are adjusted for cost of living over time. The conditions of adjustment, if you're interested in more details, are provided on our webpage under a page labeled cost of living adjustment. I've seen some questions in the Q&A about this, and I know that my colleagues have linked relevant web pages. But if you're interested in how periodic benefits are adjusted over time, go to that webpage. It explains in quite some detail how pension adjustments work. And periodic benefits like retirement benefits or disability benefits also include survivors' entitlements, potential future survivors' entitlements, meaning following the death of a former participant, either in service or in retirement or in disability, if there are or there is an entitled survivor, like a spouse, like children, the fund will make survivors payments, meaning pay monthly payments to the entitled survivors. So these are key takeaways. There are different kinds of benefits, and depending on the kind of benefit you're entitled to and you elect, it's calculated in a different manner, and it includes different or may not include certain additional benefits like adjustment for cost of living and survivors' entitlements. So with that, what is a settlement payment? I mentioned already there is a withdrawal settlement, which is a payment to anyone who separates with less than normal retirement age and who elects a withdrawal settlement. And for anyone younger than anyone who has less than 5 years of contributory service at the time of separation is entitled only to this withdrawal settlement. And we're going to look at the withdrawal settlement in a moment. Another settlement payment is called a residual settlement. Dilba mentioned it a bit earlier. I will talk about it a bit later when I talk about survivors' payments. A residual settlement is basically the last final payment the fund would ever make after all entitlements and payments have been made on behalf of a former participant. When there's no other payment anymore, meaning no retirement benefit to be paid, no survivors payments to be made, in that case, if there's still a remainder of someone's own contributions and interest in the fund, then that constitutes a so-called residual of that person's own contributions, which the fund would make as a final payment to those who may be entitled. On the other hand, what are periodic benefits? So those benefits that are payable on a regular monthly installment. They include the 3 kinds of retirement benefits, which are the deferred retirement or early retirement or normal retirement. And they also include disability benefit and survivors' benefits. So all of these 5 kinds of benefits are monthly payments. Some of them are lifelong payments. Some of them are payable for a duration, a limited duration in time. I will talk about conditions a bit more in a moment. So, what are the key factors to calculate the 2 kinds of benefits? Let's first talk about the withdrawal settlement. The withdrawal settlement is calculated differently than the periodic retirement benefit. A withdrawal settlement is calculated based on the amount of your own contributions and the interest, compounded interest that you earned on that own contribution amount. A withdrawal settlement never includes the organizational share. That share is used to fund the UN Pension Fund pension scheme and system, and of course the fact that we can make lifelong retirement, disability, potentially disability benefits, and pay survivors benefits in the manner we do. So a withdrawal settlement only includes your own contributions increased by the compounded interest that you have earned on the amount of your own contributions over time. And if you had less than 5 years of contributory service when you separate, that is exactly what you will get. Your own contributions reimbursed plus the interest that you earned. If, however, at the time of separation, you have contributed for more than 5 years to the fund, and you still decide to not elect a form of retirement benefit, but to take a withdrawal settlement, then you will get more than your own contributions and interest. In that case, the amount of your own contributions and interest will be increased by a certain percentage that is proportionate to how many years you contributed to the fund more than 5 years. So 5 years is the vesting point, right? So the fund says, if you contributed more than 5 years to the fund, yet you are foregoing the option of taking a lifelong retirement benefit, and instead say, I want a withdrawal settlement, in that case, the fund will increase your entitlement by a certain percentage based on how many years you contributed to the fund more than 5 years. So what is that percentage? It is 10% per year and prorated per month that you contributed to the fund for more than 5 years. The maximum increase that the fund can pay on a withdrawal settlement, so the maximum increase of your own contributions and interest would be 100% increase. So you cannot get more than double the amount of your own contributions and interest. Since we are counting this in installments of 10% per year and prorated months, basically you reach the maximum 100% increase once you have hit at least 15 years of contributory service. But if you had less than 15 years and you separate, let's say, with 7 years of contributory service, you'd get the amount of your own contributions plus interest increased by 20% because you have 2 years more than 5 years of contributory service. So your own contribution plus interest amount is increased by 20%. That's how it works. Now, on the other hand, and Dilba mentioned this, I think, several times, how do we calculate a retirement benefit? A retirement benefit is calculated taking into account the length of your contributory service, the months and the years that you paid contributions to the fund, from the date of joining to the date of separation. That length of contributory service will translate into a rate of accumulation under number 2 on the right-hand side. So that rate of accumulation is a percentage rate that is basically the translation into a percentage rate of the length of your contributory service in the fund. Now that percentage rate is then multiplied by the your final average remuneration, your final average income. And I saw a lot of questions around this in the Q&A. So your final average remuneration, how is that calculated? It is calculated by looking at the best 36 months of pensionable remuneration in your case during the last 60 months of your contributory service before separating. So we're looking at the best 36 months in the last 60 months or 5 years of your contributory service. Some people ask, what if I accept a post at a lower level during the end of my career? Is that bad? Is that neutral? The answer is, for as long as your best, or as long as the lower level post and therefore lower level pensionable remuneration rates don't exceed 24 months, you would still get your benefit calculated based on the best 36 months in the last 5 years, which means if you don't have the lower level post for more than 24 months, it would be calculated based on the higher level that you had during the last 5 years of your contributory service. But the moment you exceed 24 months on a lower level post, indeed, it would pull your overall final average remuneration calculation downward. But back to the general calculation. So in general, the fund calculates the final average remuneration based on the last 60 months of your contributory service, and during those last 60 months takes the best 36 months, averages them, and that then constitutes your final average remuneration. And that we use to multiply by our rate of accumulation rate percentage. Generally speaking, the idea is that someone's best pensionable remuneration rates are at the end of their career. So by calculating the final average remuneration based on the last 5 years and the best 36 months inside those last 5 years, really the idea is to use the highest pensionable remuneration rates on average that we experience in our career, because usually it is at the end of the career that we have the higher rates, since our pensionable remuneration is based on our grade and step, as explained by Dilber. Now, other factors will determine our entitlement as a retirement benefit. So once we have the basis calculation, rate of accumulation times final average remuneration, the fund will of course check when we receive your separation documents, what is your separation date and how old are you at the time of separation. And then based on that information, we know whether you at the time of separation had reached at least your normal retirement age, as was explained by Dilber, or you're younger. So if you have reached at least your normal retirement age or older, then it's clear you are entitled to a retirement benefit if you have vested pension rights. And that benefit would be calculated simply by doing the calculation I explained. If you take a lump sum as part of your benefit, we of course take that into account, but there's no other reduction that would apply. However, if at the time of separation you're actually younger than your normal retirement age, in that case, we would have to determine what kind of retirement benefit you're actually entitled to. And if that is an early retirement benefit and you elected that, we would have to reduce your entitlement by a reduction factor based on how many years and months you are younger than normal retirement age at the time of separation. Also, based on how many years of contributory service you had at the time of separation on early retirement. So those are additional factors that we will take into account to make the decision, or the decision determination of what your entitlement options are. And then once you have made your benefit election, what the amount is that you will receive. There are often questions as to how accurate is the estimate that you can run. The answer to that is the closer you run your estimate to separation, the more accurate it will be, because it will be taking into account more accurate pensionable remuneration data. But it cannot be 100% accurate because we will only receive the data for your current year participation during your year of separation when you actually have separated. So that's data we don't have on file yet since we have year-end reporting. But the estimations are, I would say, very close to what you will actually get if you run an estimate fairly close within a few weeks or months from your actual separation date. If you run an estimate 10 years before separation, it's more like an indication of what the general idea is of what you will get in the future. But of course, we wouldn't know your career evolution and therefore the increases in your pensionable remuneration. We don't know the adjustments to pensionable remuneration, which usually happen and are done by the International Civil Service Commission once a year, or at least every other year. So those things we can't project. So our estimates are very conservative and probably underestimate your future entitlements considerably if you run an estimate today and you are actually separating only in 15 or 20 years. Now, I already mentioned this. your benefit options are determined based on your separation date, meaning it is based on that separation date that we will know what is the length of your contributory service, what kind of benefit are you entitled to, and also based on your age at that date, whether you are entitled to a normal or an early or deferred retirement benefit, or possibly only to a withdrawal settlement. Here's just a reminder, Dilber covered this already. Again, normal retirement and early retirement ages are determined based on the date at which you joined the fund. Now, here are just some scenarios to show you that depending on your date of entry and therefore into the fund, and therefore your normal and early retirement ages for pension purposes, different benefit options will be available to you based on the length of your contributory service and your age at the time of separation. So in these scenarios, and we have 3 scenarios based on the 3 normal retirement ages we know exist for fund members. If you look at scenario 2, which probably applies to most people, which is if someone entered the fund between 1 January 1990 and 31 December 2013, and that person separates with vested pension rights, meaning at least 5 years of contributory service, then depending on these ages that are marked here, different benefit options would be available to them. If someone separated with an age younger than 55 and vested pension rights, they can choose between 2 benefit options, a withdrawal settlement or a deferred retirement benefit. However, if the person separates between 55 and normal retirement age, in this scenario 62, their benefit options would include an additional 3rd benefit option, the early retirement benefit. And anyone separating as of their normal retirement age for pension purposes under this scenario, number 2, would be entitled to a normal retirement benefit provided they had vested pension rights at the time of separation and provided they were at least normal retirement age, 62 in this scenario, when they separated. There's another page with scenario 3 for those who joined the fund since the 1st of January 2014, where their normal retirement age for pension purposes is 65 and early retirement age for pension purposes is 58. So this is something you can refer back to. It's just a different way of looking at always the same idea of based on the length of your contributory service and your age at the time of separation, what are your benefit options? Now, I already showed to you earlier, there is a video about this. I will not play it here, but you can look at it either via the presentation, or you can, of course, go to our website and the video pages. There are also those charts I pulled up a bit earlier, the comparative benefit charts, where based on, again, the same idea of length of contributory service and age at the time of separation, you can determine what is your scenario and therefore what are the benefit options open to you, and then go into the details under each benefit option to better understand what it entails. There's a link directly to this page where these charts are posted. It is on the page of benefit options on our website. Now, one by one, but very high level, we are going through the benefit options. The withdrawal settlement, again, a settlement payment, a final cash payout, a one-time payment. Withdrawal settlements are based on the amount of your own contributions to the fund, not the organizational share. It is not taken into account. However, of course, the interest is taken into account. And again, another key takeaway, if you separate with vested pension rights, you can elect a withdrawal settlement only if you are younger than your normal retirement age. So if you're actually someone who could elect a form of retirement benefit, you are entitled to take a withdrawal settlement only up to your normal retirement age. If you separate at normal retirement age or later, the withdrawal settlement option is no longer possible. So if you are in the future interested in taking a withdrawal settlement, make sure if you have vested pension rights to separate at least 1 day before reaching normal retirement age. I will say most people are not interested in a withdrawal settlement if they could get a form of retirement benefit, especially a normal retirement benefit. Now, retirement benefits, here we're talking about periodic benefits payable for life, monthly, adjusted for cost of living over time, with attached survivor's benefits. The key takeaway for these kinds of benefits are retirement benefits payable for life. You can, under normal and early retirement, opt for a partial lump sum payment. So you can take a portion of your entitlement as a cash lump sum payout that is paid at the time of implementation of your benefit, with the remainder payable as a lifelong monthly benefit that will be adjusted for cost of living over time. If you take a lump sum, you will accordingly reduce your pension, your lifelong pension, to a lesser amount. If you don't take a lump sum, then of course you get the maximum level of lifelong monthly payments. The partial lump sum is at a maximum 1/3 of your total entitlement, and 1/3 of your entitlement will correspond more or less, but very closely, to your own contributions and interest that you contributed and earned over the time of your contributory service. So you could think of it that at the maximum, you could withdraw a lump sum of the equivalent of your own contributions and interest and still have a remainder under early or normal retirement payable as a lifelong benefit to you in the form of a retirement payment. You also could say, I don't want the maximum lump sum, but I want a part of a lump sum. In that case, the higher the lump sum, the more reduced your retirement lifelong payments, and the lower the lump sum, the higher your lifelong retirement payments. Also, periodic benefits include survivor's benefits, maybe meaning you are covered for the risk of death. If you pass away and you are entitled to a retirement benefit, then if you have entitled survivors like spouse, children, they would be entitled, if they fulfill the conditions, to regular monthly survivors payments. I'm not going here again. You have seen this formula before, you have heard about it, so I'm moving on. So very high level overview, what is a normal retirement benefit? It is one of the 3 retirement benefits the fund provides. It's lifelong payments with an option to convert part of the benefit into a lump sum. It includes potential survivors benefits following your death if they are entitled survivors. It also includes a child allowance payment if you have at the time of retirement a child under the age of 21 reported to the pension fund. You would then get this child allowance until the end of the 21st birth month for that child. Early retirement. An early retirement benefit is also a periodic benefit payable for life in monthly installments. It also offers the option to take a lump sum. However, the big difference with the normal retirement benefit is that here we would have to apply a reduction factor to this early retirement entitlement for life, since you would be separating earlier than your normal retirement age and start receiving payments from the fund earlier than at normal retirement age. This means from an actuarial standpoint, the fund has to compensate for the fact that you're probably going to receive payments from the fund for a longer period in time than had you only separated at normal retirement age. And that compensation is done through the application of an early retirement reduction factor to your benefit for life. As I mentioned earlier, the early retirement reduction factor takes into account how many years and months you are younger than your normal retirement age at the time of separation. That will become a multiplier. And it takes into account the length of your contributory service at the time of separation on early retirement. If you had less than 25 years of contributory service at the time of separation, your reduction factor per year and prorated months that you are younger than normal retirement age is going to be 6%. So if you are 2 years younger than normal retirement age, when you separate and you elect an early retirement benefit, the reduction factor would have to be 2 times 6%, 12% reduction for life of whatever your entitlement is based on the general formula. If, however, you had between 25 and 30 years of contributory service when you separate from service on early retirement, that reduction factor would be less. It would be 3% per year in prorated months that you are younger than normal retirement age. So in the same scenario of someone separating 2 years before normal retirement age on early retirement, for them, if they had between 25 and 30 years of contributory service at the time of separation, their reduction would be 3% times 2, 6% for life as an early retirement reduction. And then those who separate with 30 or more years of contributory service on early retirement, their reduction factor is only 1% per year and prorated months that they are younger than their normal retirement age when they separate on early retirement. So again, if we take someone separating 2 years before normal retirement age with a length of contributory service of over 30 years, in their case, the reduction applicable to them as early retirement reduction would be 2 times 1, 2%. So all this to say, if you are going to one day elect an early retirement benefit, there will be a reduction factor. But the level of reduction will depend on the length of your contributory service at the time of separation and depend on how many years and months you're actually younger at the time of separation on early retirement than your normal retirement age. So if you're considering early retirement, I would say if you can reach 25 years of contributory service at the time of separation on early retirement, it would be good because you would have a lower reduction factor applied to you. And if you reach even 30 years, great, because that would be a very small reduction applied to your early retirement benefit. Again, the reduction factor only applies to an early retirement benefit because we start paying you a retirement benefit earlier than your normal retirement age. Another benefit is the deferred retirement benefit. That's the third kind of retirement benefit the fund provides. Deferred retirement benefits can be elected even if you're younger than normal or early retirement at the time of separation, for as long as you have vested pension rights, for as long as you have at least 5 years of contributory service at the time of separation. The deferred retirement benefit does not offer a lump sum option. It is only lifelong monthly payments adjusted for cost of living over time, of course. It also does not provide any form of child's benefit, not a child allowance, not a surviving child's benefit. However, it does provide for a potential surviving spouse's benefit. So to remember, yes, you can elect a form of retirement benefit if you have vested pension rights at the time of separation, even if you're younger than normal or early retirement age at that time. That benefit would be a deferred retirement benefit. However, it does not offer a lump sum option. It does not cover your children. The early retirement benefit cannot start into payment until you have reached at least your early retirement age. So if I separated at age 45, I mean, I'm older, but let's say someone separates at age 45 and elected a deferred retirement benefit, the earliest this deferred retirement benefit could start into payment is their early retirement age. If that is, for example, 55, they'd have to wait for 10 years before starting to receive these payments. And if at the time of starting to receive deferred retirement payments, the person is younger than their normal retirement age, we again have to apply this reduction factor for early retirement payments. So the person could say, I don't want this reduction factor. I have an income from another source. I don't need these payments to start at my early retirement age. I can wait until my normal retirement age, or closer at least to my normal retirement age. So this deferred retirement benefit is the only retirement benefit that allows you to decide at what time you wanted to start into payment. And you could say, I can wait till normal retirement age so that there is no reduction factor. The other two retirement benefits, early and normal retirement benefits, do not allow you to decide when they start to become payable. They will start to be payable effective the date following your separation. And if an early retirement reduction factor has to be applied, then we have to apply that and calculate it based on that separation date. So normal and early retirement benefits will be payable effective the date following your separation. Of course, it takes time to implement a benefit, but once we implement it, we pay you retroactively back to your date of entitlement. Deferred retirement, you choose when you wanted to start into payment. You can wait till normal retirement age so that there's no reduction factor, or you can choose to have it start anytime as of early retirement age. And finally, there is something else that is not a benefit option, but the option to freeze your holdings in the fund. So if you are to separate, and at the time of separation, you have a high expectation or hope that you will again join the UN system as a staff member and the pension fund as a participant in the fairly near future, you could avail of this option to defer the choice and payment of your benefit till later. At the maximum, you can defer a payment and benefit election for 36 months from the date of separation. So you have up to 36 months to make a decision. If during a deferment period, you return to become again a participant in the fund, then we would simply continue your participation as of that rejoining date and unfreeze your existing holdings in the fund, and they would become part of your new period of of your new contributory service period. And both the frozen period and the new period will become one period once you again separate and we calculate your entitlements and your benefit options are determined. The period in between, if you have a break in service period, will never be pensionable, as Dilba explained. So there is this option to not take out your money and to not make a benefit election, but to leave the decision for up to 36 months. If during the 36 months you realize, oh no, I'm not coming back, or I need the money, you can at any time contact the fund, provide payment instructions, and we will pay you. But if you do come back within 36 months of a deferment period, then you would simply join your existing acquired pension rights with your future ones. Okay, so now I know that the Q&A has reopened. So if you have questions, you are again invited to submit them. I will now cover survivors benefits, and thereafter we'll give you a brief demo of member self-service and some hopefully useful pages on our website. But first, other benefits the fund provides, including disability and survivors benefits. What are the key takeaways here in this chapter? First of all, that you are covered for the risk of disability and death from the date that you become a UNJSPF participant, and no vesting is required for as long as you were medically cleared. That coverage exists. This means in case this risk of disability and/or death materializes, your entitled survivors will be entitled to an income replacement, or you as a disability recipient will receive an income replacement from the fund. Of course, there are eligibility criteria. If they are met, the fund will provide for periodic payments to those entitled, either in the form of a disability benefit or for a limited duration for children as a surviving child's benefit, or for life to surviving spouses. So let's have a look at more information, but that is the high-level takeaway that you are covered for this risk of death and disability through according payments from the fund. First, the disability benefit. This is a monthly benefit payable upon application and award by the fund of a disability benefit to a fund participant who, for reasons of health, can no longer work and qualifies for such benefit. A disability benefit will never include a lump sum payment. It is monthly payments. And a disability benefit, would be calculated as if this person had not stopped contributing upon starting disability, but had continued to contribute to the fund until their normal retirement age. So if I had become disabled at the age of 45 and I had applied and been awarded a disability benefit, the fund would have calculated my disability benefit based on a length of contributory service, not actually based on my contributory service up to separation into disability, but as if I had continued to contribute to the fund at the same rate as my latest contribution rate till my normal retirement age, which in my case is 62. So for nearly 20 more years. And it is based on that fictitious contributory service that the fund would calculate the rate of accumulation that will then be used to multiply by that person's final average remuneration, which is based on their actual final average remuneration. So what we will do is we take the final income level of this person at the time of separation on disability. So we look at the best 36 last pensionable remuneration rates in the last 36 months, 60 months. Apologies. Average those, obtain the final average remuneration, and multiply by the rate of accumulation as if the person had actually contributed all the way up till their normal retirement age to the fund. And then we pay this benefit in monthly installments for as long as the person's disability lasts. There might be a requirement to submit regular medical reports every few years to the fund to determine whether the disability continues or not. I will say that the vast majority of disability benefits that the fund pays actually become lifelong payments. So in other words, a disability benefit is actually calculated as if the person had contributed to a normal retirement age, and it is paid at that level. Child's benefit I mentioned quickly earlier. With the early, normal, and disability benefits, the fund will provide for child benefits payable together during your lifetime as a so-called child allowance with your entitlement. With a disability benefit, it would start immediately as payments. With a normal retirement benefit, it would start immediately. And for early retirement benefits, payment of a child allowance would start only once you have reached your normal retirement age. The condition for all of these is that your child or children are under the age of 21 at the time of you becoming entitled to a potential child allowance. If your children are older, they are no longer entitled to a child allowance, except if they are recognized as disabled children by the fund. So if you have children that are disabled, please contact the fund at the time of separation to inform us so we can instruct you on what to do to have the process applied to recognize a child as a disabled child, in which case the fund will pay child allowance and potential surviving child's benefit beyond age 21. All right. Now we're going into survivor's benefits. This is a very important coverage that you have as part of your participation in the fund, just like the disability coverage. We get a lot of questions from people who ask about these and want to understand, of course, what this coverage is, especially staff who work in dangerous duty stations who are worried what happens if something happens to me. So the following slides will address this. So these are the questions I will cover. If I pass away, will the fund pay anything to my survivors? What should I do to prepare, and what should my survivors, potential survivors, do? And where can I find necessary information? So if these takeaways, if you take away the answers to these questions, I think you would be very well prepared, and you can help prepare your potential survivors, know what to do in the event that something happens to you. Hopefully this is never needed, and I always think of it as an umbrella. The fund kind of is, in that sense, your umbrella, providing for income replacement to your loved ones if ever something happened and you passed away. Of course, we hope that doesn't happen, but if it is the case, it is good to know and to have probably informed your potential survivors or your dependents of what to do and what is possible coverage, so that they too know and you and they are reassured. So, am I covered for the risk of death? You know the answer to this because we have mentioned it many times today. Yes, fund participants are covered for the risk of death from day one of contributing to the fund. The fund in that case will provide an income replacement to the entitled survivors, those that meet the conditions. And yes, there are coverage conditions, meaning you must be medically cleared and all your dependents must have been reported to your HR and the fund. This is something you have to do. Make sure that you have duly reported your dependents to your HR, because your HR then will transmit that data to the pension fund. Now, which of your dependents might be entitled? We distinguish basically between primary dependents and secondary dependents. So, who is potentially covered? Primary dependents include your spouse or spouses if you married under the regime of polygamy, ex-spouse or spouses if you were married and then divorced while a participant in the fund. If an ex-spouse fulfills numerous conditions, there could potentially be an entitlement to a surviving spouse's benefit in the future for an ex-spouse. And children, child or children, normally under the age of 21 or beyond if recognized as disabled by the fund. So if you do not have primary dependents who survive you, in that case, and only in that case, the fund would consider and check if you have a secondary dependent reported to the fund. A secondary dependent can be either a parent or a sibling. If you were entitled to a secondary dependent allowance from your employing organization, and then if you passed away in service, the fund would consider paying a secondary dependent benefit if at the time of death you were entitled to that coverage, to that allowance. If at the time of separation you are entitled to a secondary dependent allowance, that is reported to the fund, and we will know who is that secondary dependent, and then consider, if ever you pass away and there's no primary dependent entitled to a benefit from the fund, whether there is still a secondary dependent who could be entitled, and then if so, we would pay a survivor's benefit to the secondary dependent. But mark the cross on the left-hand side, only if there's no primary dependent entitled. What if you don't have a primary or a secondary dependent who survives you? In that case, we will check whether a residual settlement is payable. Again, if you remember, I mentioned earlier, a residual settlement is what remains of your own contributions and interests that you contributed and earned while a participant, and that was not yet paid out to you or any entitled survivor following your separation and or death. If you took a lump sum as part of an early or normal retirement benefit, and you took the maximum lump sum, that means you would have exhausted the equivalent of your own contributions and interest, and there would be no residual settlement payable. However, if you didn't take a lump sum or you died in service, at that stage, the fund always checks if there's no primary or secondary dependent entitled to regular monthly payments from the fund. We check if there's still money sitting in our pension fund that corresponds to your own contributions and interest. And if so, we will pay that money as a final residual payment to those entitled. And I will talk about who might be entitled a bit later. So, what kinds of benefits does the fund then pay? Either periodic monthly payments for your primary or secondary dependent, if any of these would be entitled, or if none of them are entitled, a one-time final residual settlement payment to the beneficiary or beneficiaries that you have designated on a special form, A2, and provided, of course, that there's actually a residual of your own contributions and interests that remained unpaid. How long are survivors' payments made for? Well, for the primary and the secondary dependent payments, we make monthly payments. For a spouse or an ex-spouse, those payments will be for life, even if they remarried. If they are entitled and it has been confirmed that they are entitled, once entitled and we start payments, these payments are lifelong payments. For a child or children, we pay until age 21, meaning until the end of the month during which the child or children turn 21. Or if a child was recognized disabled by the fund, we pay beyond age 21 for as long as the child's disability lasts. For secondary dependents, we pay to a parent for life and to a sibling until the age of 21. So the same conditions apply for a parent as for a spouse and to a surviving sibling as for a child. Remember, secondary dependent only potentially eligible if there is no primary survivor, and only one secondary dependent could ever be entitled, either a parent or a sibling. How long is a residual settlement payable for? It's a one-time payment. So once it's paid, that is it, if it is payable. Now, how are these benefits calculated? The benefits for the primary dependent, or for that matter, for a secondary dependent, are based on your entitlement at the time of death in retirement or disability, and then they would receive half of your full entitlement. Or if it is a death in service, so if a staff member passes away in service, we would calculate the survivor's entitlement based on what your normal retirement would have been had you actually continued to contribute to the fund until your normal retirement age. So in that case, if it's a death in service, we calculate first what would have been your entitlement at normal retirement age had you continued to contribute, and then pay a portion of that entitlement to the entitled survivor. For a spouse, the entitlement would be 50% of your full entitlement. For a child or children, it would be equivalent to a child's allowance, or if it's a full orphan, up to a third of your entitlement, as calculated, as explained here. No survivor's benefit will ever allow for payment of a lump sum, and all survivor's benefits payable in monthly installments are adjusted for cost of living. Now, we get a lot of questions specifically about surviving spouses' benefits. So here, a little bit more about a surviving spouse's benefit. Entitlement is for life. The fund may recognize multiple spouses, provided all of them were married under polygamous law. The condition for a spouse to be entitled to a survivor's benefit is you must have been married while you were participating in the fund, so marriage during your contributory service, and you must have remained married to the same spouse until your death. In that case, the spouse will be entitled. So for a death in service, if you're married and you die in service, the spouse is entitled. For a death in retirement or disability, if you were married at the latest at the time of separation and remained married to the same spouse until date of death in disability or retirement, then your spouse is entitled. What documents will be required from the spouse at the time of determining entitlement? Marriage certificate, valid government-issued picture ID, and a special form. For more information, please visit our website, including for information of recognition by the fund of non-traditional union for the payment of potential survivors' benefits. If you have any questions, visit these pages and/or contact the pension fund. What can you do to prepare? It's fairly simple. Report your dependents to your HR. That is very important. Visit our website and member self-service to have access to the tools you need to know what are entitlements. And finally, inform your dependents. Put this information, the key information, contact details for the fund, and possibly links to the relevant pages here, or just printing out these few pages with your will, or send them the relevant links. Is it pleasant? No, but I think I would feel better knowing I have informed and prepared my potential survivors than thinking that they may be completely lost if ever anything happened to me. Now, very important also that you submit Form A2. You can download this form, complete it, hand sign it, and re-upload it to the fund if you have access to that feature in your member self-service, or submit it through your employing organization to the fund. Make sure we have this form on file. It is the form that will determine payment of a residual settlement. So we need to have a duly dated and signed form on file to make payment if ever a residual settlement is payable. I will say it's very rare that residual settlements are payable because in most cases we actually have to pay regular monthly survivors' benefits, or in many cases people have already exhausted the equivalent of their own contributions and interest through payments that they received in the form of retirement benefits and/or survivors' benefits paid to survivors, or taking a lump sum as part of early or normal retirement benefits. But make sure you have completed this form. You can designate whomever you like on this form as a potential recipient of a residual settlement. It is up to you to say who should receive that money. I can tell you in my case, I put my daughter, she's well over 30, so in her case, she would never be entitled to surviving child's benefit. And should I pass away and my husband not be alive at that time anymore, or soon after also pass away, and if there is a residual of my own contributions and interest, I would want that to go to my child. Also, run estimates in member self-service. It will include dependent child survivors entitlement if these were provided to the fund, meaning if your dependents were reported duly to us by your HR. So that's another option to get a sense of what could be payable. And again, download this booklet, information from our website about survivors' entitlements. It's a good summary document of what is needed, what are the entitlements that, as I said earlier, you could potentially put with your will or somewhere where you think it could be useful in the future. If ever something happened to you, what should your dependents do? Visit our website, report your death as soon as possible to the fund. If it's a death in service, your organization would inform us, of course. Here I'm talking about death in after separation. Always contact us if there are any questions, and then we will determine eligibility and do what we can to make payments. Where can you find relevant information about this topic? On our website. Here are the slides. In your member self-service, and you can always contact us. Okay, I will not go into the details of the next slides, but I want you to know that there are several slides explaining survivors' benefits one by one in more detail. So if you are interested, go to this presentation once it's published, and you will see that there is much more information for each of these benefits that I mentioned, and you will get more detail on all the different kinds of benefits if needed, including information about the residual settlement. Okay, so I'm going through this and I'm going towards the end. I want to show you pension member self-service, and then we are done with this pension presentation. So I would say at this point, we are going to close the chat because we have a lot of questions that have come in and need to give our colleagues some time to actually answer them. So I think it is closed already. I apologize. So it's already closed. I know that we got the question of whether we can publish the Q&A on our website together with the recording and the presentation. We will try and do that so that you have access to this important information. It may take us more than the time of this presentation to answer the remaining over 70 questions, but we will do our best so that you have that information too as part of the resources following this presentation. Okay, so now, just so you know, in this presentation, there are several pages that you can go to in your own time on our pension tools. I would say key takeaways: visit our website regularly. There is useful information. You probably also are receiving regular newsletters from the fund. Read them. They may include information that could absolutely be relevant to you. And if you don't find the newsletters important or relevant, do visit our website, I don't know, every few months to be aware of what is going on and if there's something of interest. Register for member self-service. If you haven't done that yet, do it. It's an important tool to manage your pension and be empowered to really know what's going on with your pension participation, etc. And if you need help with any form of pension question that cannot be addressed through member self-service, through the website, through this presentation, in that case, contact us. Of course, we're here to help. As you could see earlier, at the very beginning, I told you in 2023, we answered over 120,000 queries during that year. Of course, that is our job. Do we get a lot of queries? Yes. Does it sometimes take time to get an answer? Also, yes, because we are a very small team, relatively speaking, of about 30 people handling queries and other tasks. So it can take time to get an answer, but we're doing our best to respond within a reasonable time frame, usually for high priority items, not more than 3 to 5 days. For lower priority items, it can take up to 15 business days, but really mostly we respond within, I would say, 5 to 10 days. That's the maximum. We also have a contact center that you can call. They answer calls at the rate of 98% of calls are answered within a minute. So it might be a good use of the call center too. Of course, if there are many calls, you may have to wait a little bit longer in the line. Our call center works 24 hours, 5 days a week during Monday through Friday. So if you go through the slides, you'll have this information. I will take you quickly to the website and member self-service just so you have the essential information that might be of use to you. So let me go to this. Hold on, I'm pulling up the website. All right. So I showed you already earlier. If you go to the website, excuse me, my mouse is being a little bit moody. Okay, never mind. All right, so website. So the main page of the website, here we are. It's www.unjspf.org. On the main page, you have, of course, I would say current information. Then if you scroll down, what is your situation? There are vignettes and you can choose what your situation is. Participation in the fund, separating or retiring, or maybe once you're retired or receiving benefits, survivors or something else. If you click on any of these vignettes, it will take you to a page that gives you the main topic pages that might be relevant for you in the context of the vignettes that you chose. I'll show that to you in a moment. There are some key figures. Further down, you have news articles that are also often very relevant, and so on. Okay, now if you go to the menu here on the top, for clients, I think this is one of the most useful tools if you need pension information. Either you know what your situation is and you want to really focus on that status of yours, you select then that title, participation, separating, retired, etc. Or you can say, I just want to see all the topics. So if you see all the topics here, as I said earlier, you really have a wealth of web pages that provide information about these topics. If I take just randomly one, I don't know, let's take leave without pay. There's information about leave without pay. There's a video about leave without pay. There are related links and Q&A. I think this is very useful. If you have questions about separation, or about overview of the separation process, or about benefit options, or about the annual pension statement. If you go to annual pension statement, you have a guide how to read the pension statement, general information, and links to other useful pages like pensionable remuneration. So make use of this website. We spent a lot of time, and our communications team really spends a lot of time with us to try and really design this page so that it answers the questions for which we are most frequently contacted. So this all topics page, I think, is super useful. If you're interested in investments, of course, you go here, resources, useful resources for various items, regulations and rules, information about member self-service, we go there in just a moment. E-learning modules, information about pension town halls. Our current town hall information will be, and recording will be posted there. Future sessions will be announced there. All the videos that we have for different topics, all the booklets are here. About us, information about the fund, including actuarial matters, if you're interested. Contact us. Click here if you need to contact the fund. This is where you will have access to all of the key or the main contact channels for the fund. Let me click there actually. This is what you should use to contact us. Do not please write to individual staff members in the fund. We all are very busy and we have assigned roles. In addition, some of us might be on leave, might be on maternity leave, might be on extended sick leave. There are reasons why sometimes people don't answer because they didn't see an email that reached them. So don't write to individuals, always write using the form on our website. This form will identify you to a certain extent. We will know what the topic of contact is for, and we will route your query to the right pension team of experts so that they then answer. And there will be always review of queries that come in by this team. And if one team member is out, there's a number of other team members working on the queries. So if you write here, you can be assured that your query will be answered by a relevant expert in a timely manner. If you need to contact the fund otherwise, you can call us. Here is a number on top or a number under Geneva, but honestly, these numbers are open to anyone. You don't need to be in Geneva or New York to use them for our contact center. And at the bottom under toll-free numbers, you have, I think, close to 70 countries that have toll-free numbers. So if you need to call us and you have a toll-free number in the country where you are, use it. You will reach the same team of pension experts in our call center. If you want to visit us in New York or Geneva, check first our office location, of course, but also our walk-in service hours and days. In both Geneva and New York, we are open on Tuesdays and Thursdays during half days. So check what is the timing when you can come and walk in. I will say that sometimes, exceptionally, we have to close. It could be because of a snowstorm, maybe not anymore, but it was, or for some other reason. So always before visiting, check, are they open? Make sure you come during the official open hours, and we will be happy to receive you and assist you. And if you need to mail us something, there are our mailing addresses. So this is a very good page to know how to contact us. Back to the website. I would say we are going now to member self-service. So you can either click here on the top to member self-service login if you already registered, or if you need general information first about member self-service, you click here on under resources about member self-service. Here you have information on what is it useful for if I'm a participant, if I'm a beneficiary. And then you also have information on registering, how to register. What do you need to register? Your unique ID number, a 9-digit number that is your reference number in the fund. If you don't know your unique ID number, click here and you will find instructions on where to find it or how to obtain it. If you have issues, technical issues with member self-service, on this page, you have contact details for the member self-service support team. If there are issues, please contact us. This team answers within 1, maximum 3 days, but usually 1 or less days. Now, let's say you want to access member self-service. First, if you need to newly register, you click here on register. It will ask you for your credentials. You'll need your name, your date of birth, and your pension fund unique ID number. Once you've provided those, you will be asked to provide an email address that is associated with your member self-service, create a username, and create a password. You'll also have to answer some security questions, and then usually you can go in and use your member self-service. Now, once you have logged in or created your account, you simply can click here to log in. If ever you forget your username or password, please try to reset it by using these tabs. I'm going to log into mine now. So I'm logging in. This is member self-service. I accept. That's a disclaimer. I'm accepting it. I'm now in member self-service. What are the key tools here? First of all, I would say top right corner, account. Here is where you can change your email address in the future. And usually we suggest you use a personal email so it doesn't get outdated once you separate. You can change your email address here under account, reset your password, update your questions, and update your language preference if ever that is necessary. So this is where you do it, under accounts. Now let's go back to the home page. The key tabs as a participant that I think are useful here are documents. This is where you will access your estimates if you have run any. I run a lot because I use it as a demo also, but also your pension statement. And you can see that I here have my pension statement 2023, which is a statement that gives my participation information since I joined till year end 23. The next one will be published mid-May, and it will provide you with an updated version of the statement that goes up to year end 24. So check back in your member self-service mid-May, it should be there. You can also obviously see here your estimates. E-forms, this is where you should access any official pension fund form. It will be pre-completed with your information. If you need to upload an A2 form, you can access the form here. You see, I just opened it. You can complete it. You can date it. You then print it, sign it. We don't accept electronic signatures. And then you make a scanned copy and you can upload that document back to us if you have this tab visible, Member Self-Service MSS Document Upload. All pension fund forms are available here, and they will include your personal information. You saw that mine is pre-completed already with my name and also my unique ID number. So, and very important, a barcode, which will make sure that when I submit this form, it is easily tracked and added to my file by the fund. That's important. Then personal information is where you see information about your own case that was reported to us by your employing organization. If you think you're eligible for validation, restoration, or transfer, as explained by Dilba, you can make an application here. If you want to run an estimate, here is where you do that. Let me make this a bit smaller, actually. Okay. So here on this estimate page is where you can run estimates. You can enter any separation date that you are considering, let's say 31 March. And then first You are not going to put anything under fixed lump sum. I would leave that empty, and you simply submit your request. You click OK up here, and now you wait until this little blue wheel has stopped turning. Why didn't I put a fixed lump sum amount? Because I first want to see the maximum lump sum payable before I enter an amount that I think could be good for me, if there is a lump sum payable at all. And then you see here under estimate on the top, sorry, I have estimate is completed. Please go to the documents tab to review the estimate document. All right, so if I go to documents, here it is, 12 March 25 estimate. So this is my estimate. I'm not going to show it, it's mine, but this is how it works. And then if I see in this estimate, I have an early retirement entitlement with a possible lump sum option, it would show the maximum lump sum payable. I could then go back and say, oh, I don't want the maximum lump sum, but for the same date, 31/03/2025, I want to know what a fixed lump sum is. So if my maximum lump sum is 50,000, what if I take only 10,000? So I enter this amount here and I resubmit my request. So this is how you use the estimate tool. And then finally, MSS document upload. Here you can upload documents to the fund. Not all organizations have made this tab available for their participants. So there are some agencies where you would not see the MSS document upload tab. You'll only see it after separation. But the majority of organizations, you can see the document upload tab. It looks like this. If you want to upload a document, you just go in there and you say, choose a file. So if I want to choose a file from my documents, I choose one. I'm not going to do it right now. I click upload. I then have a menu to select what kind of document I'm submitting, and I'm done. And then I send it, of course. Once I've done that, I get a confirmation if the upload was successful. If for some reason it wasn't, you would know. I can also check by going to under document upload to outbox whether my documents were uploaded. And you see here that I see numerous documents that I uploaded over time. So if you uploaded an A2 form, you can go back here and check whether it shows. If it does, it means it has reached the fund. So these are the key tools of member self-service. I would say, please make sure to register because this is a very important tool that you should use regularly. There's a lot of more information in the presentation that is just visual to help you navigate what I told you here. So I'm going to just flip through it, including for member self-service. And under member self-service, it also gives you an overview of each tab and what you can use it for. And it also gets into more detail about certain tabs. So for example, accounts tab, documents, and so on. Running estimates with some guidance. And it includes information on how to read estimates. So I would say, if you have any questions about what I went through, go back to this presentation because it includes a lot of information. And with this, I conclude the presentation. I know we are 5 or 10 minutes over time. I apologize. You have all the information that you need in the presentation, and I hope in this recording. And if there is something that wasn't answered or you have questions that were triggered by this presentation, please try and find answers on the website in member self-service, or if not possible, contact us. We are here to support you. We're here especially to support all those who are going through more worrisome times, not knowing whether there will be separations. But if you know that you are moving towards a separation potentially, or you're considering an agreed termination, etc., we understand that the pension considerations might need help from pension experts. So we're here to support you. Please be patient with us if it takes us a little bit of time sometimes to reply. That is not because we're not doing our job. We're actually very busy, but we do take queries in the chronological order that we receive them. We do our very best to help you all get answers as soon as possible so you can make informed decisions. I do hope that most of you do not have to separate at any time soon, but that you are going to be a long-term participant in the fund. that you will grow your future entitlements and that you will get one day a good benefit from the fund. But I hope that this presentation has helped you get a better sense of what the fund does, what we do for you, what you have to do, and also how to find useful tools and how to contact us. With this, I thank my colleagues very much. They answered well over 150 questions. There are still 21 questions that need to be replied to, so we will do that even after closing the session, and we will continue publishing the answers. And as I said earlier, we will make all of this available and hopefully including the Q&A so that you can refer to it in a couple of days when we publish them on our website. So big thanks to my colleagues. Big thanks to my colleagues also in OICT who have supported this event. And I would say if you need more information about the fund's financial situation and so on, please come join us on 9 April when our leadership is going to provide a pension town hall, global and virtual pension town hall, 9 April, 9 a.m. EST. And